Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. Here to talk about my thoughts. I'm videoing on the device that I'm actually listening to, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. And I am surprised to find that this book is not just about some quirky Southern girls slaying vampires so far. I'm probably halfway through the book. I have to look and check. But it's honestly having some weird comments. It's commenting on race and class in a weird way. And one of the girls, Patricia, is one of the girls who is white, and she is part of this book club. She's upper class in this southern town. So far, it's really just talking about these middle-class women who come together for this book club, and they first are reading, like, it starts off with them reading some book that's over the top, too much for them, and so they after being guilted for not reading the book because it was just too much, one of the more abrasive, outlandish characters says, let's just read some true crime. So they start reading some true crime. They come together once a month, and it ends up being really fun. And it kind of goes through that way for about 4 years, actually. Nothing really happening, just some quirky stuff going on. Then this vampire, no, I don't know if it's a vampire yet, but then this guy, the main character, Patricia, she's not the main character, she's who we're hearing the story through, who we're looking at this story through. And she gets bitten on the ear by this woman, and she gets bitten by this woman. It's kind of the turning event. And the guy's the girl's great grand nephew has to come down and take care of things. And Patricia, even though she was bit on the ear, she feels bad for the guy because the girl dies, and she decides to take a casserole over to him, goes in the house, thinks he's dead, tries to revive him, and he comes alive. He comes back to life, and then she's like, oh my God, I thought you were dead, blah, blah, blah. He comes and he says, sorry, and through a bunch of events, they become friends. And then this creepy stuff starts happening, and so we don't know why. She's also dealing with, so we have that going on. One of the other things that's going on is that she is dealing with her dementia-ridden mother-in-law, and she's got two kids, and she's, so there's domestic stuff going on, and the book stuff going on, and all this stuff. Then there's this event that happens where the black caretaker for the mother-in-law gets injured, and it's really gross and haunting and weird. And she goes over to, first of all, she's afraid to go to the girl's home to, like, take a pecan pie and a check to say, okay, here's some money because this happened while you were in our employ. And so it also kind of brings to mind, okay, this is one of the issues that we have here in America, where when Social Security was started, people who, domestics and migrant workers and things like that, black and brown people who filled those types of jobs were left out because it was kind of a racialized compromise back when FDR was trying to pass that stuff. So porters, bus drivers, like I said, migrant workers in the fields, housekeepers, they didn't get Social Security, and they don't have, protections that other people have, and so it's up to someone having a good heart to pay for it. So Patricia, who is kind of a naive, good-hearted person, goes and gives a check, and she's kind of offended when Miss Green is just like, she puts it in her pocket and she goes, I don't need charity, I need to actually continue to work. And so Patricia, is trying to, she's like, well, I will hire you back, and that money is supposed to tide you over. And then she's like, well, I don't have, this is not going to be enough, number one. Plus, I need to make that money fast to get my baby out of here. And the girl who comes with her is just like, well, is it because of drugs? Is it because, are you trying to get your child out of here because of super predators? And she's like, no, there's somebody killing our babies around here. She just can't hear that. Like, she's like terrified. She can't hear it. And then, the main character Patricia, that's Kitty. So the main character Patricia is trying to get the story from Miss Green. Miss Green like, no, there's people killing people around here. And Kitty goes, well, I haven't read it in the newspaper. And Miss Green is like, well, are you saying I'm lying? And she's like, well, I'm just saying I haven't read the newspaper. I read the newspaper every day. And so I'm interested in hearing, like, wouldn't somebody else be confused as what's going on? Because I immediately picked up on the fact that our stories don't get picked up. Black people go and we talk amongst ourselves. Now amongst ourselves means a bigger us. It's a bigger community with Twitter and I don't know, Facebook. Every day there's multiple missing children and grandmas and all that kind of stuff are passed around, saying, have you seen this person? So because it doesn't show up on the news. The stuff that shows up on the news is a little blonde lady. If a blonde girl or lady or baby goes missing, that will show up. And so trying to get Miss Kitty to shut up and hear is frustrating to Miss Green, and Patricia's trying to get the story. So that's really interesting to hear, to hear that. And that's kind of where I am. Like, they're Patricia has taken upon herself that she's gonna find out who is taking these black babies. So we'll see where this goes. I'm gonna listen a little bit more today as I try to defunk my bedroom, and but my children might not let me do that. So I'm hoping to come back and talk some more about this once I finish it. Probably. I don't know quite how to totally vlog yet, and so I just wanted to I felt I had energy. I did the self-care thing of doing makeup and putting on Diana, and so I wanted to go ahead and talk about this book because I am surprised that there is more to it than just kind of this idea of I thought it was kind of a twist with the Pride and Prejudice kind of thing with the zombies, I think, and then the Abraham Lincoln with the vampires. I thought it was just going to be this weird juxtaposition between these southern biddies, fighting vampires, but it's actually saying something else, and I'm wondering if it's going to continue down that road. I'm going to look up who wrote it. I'm going to look up who wrote the book because I don't think it's a black person who wrote the book. So I'm interested to see where this continues, where the story goes. So I will talk to you guys later. Bye. So I'm a little further along in the story, and the girls all wanted to have like a community meeting, have the police come, and they wanted to like tell their story about this guy who they think is the one. They're framing it as if he's a drug dealer. Patricia thinks he might actually be a vampire. But the reason why I'm stopping at this point and talking about this because this is the 90s. I know husbands can everybody's marriage is different. And but these guys are like really condescending and mean, and I was married young. I graduated from school in 95, went in the Army, got married in 98, And you know, it was much more egalitarian. Like, and then I'm remarried, and remarried in 2007. So, you know, I don't remember life being that different. And I knew other couples, and, you know, obviously there's people who are abused or neglected, but like every guy in this group of women, all these men are condescending, are some form of either on the lower level, you know, on one level, condescending all the way up to just pure outrage. You know, because come to find out, they've been, you know, talking to this dude, and he's some investor in their program. None of these guys have told any of these women, and they're all different types of women. Patricia's like in the middle of it. Grace is this, like, you know, really refined woman. Kitty is like crazy, a bunch of kids, the house is a mess, she's loud. Slick is like quiet, religious, shrinking violet. So all of these women, like, none of them had pillow talk and like knew what was going on. None of them have any, you know, both marriages I did the finances. Like, none of them does the finances. None of them have any say in the finance. Like, so I just find that a little weird. Not about the right, like, it's not taking my my enjoyment of the story away. I'm just wondering, is it a class thing? Is it a Southern thing? Is it the writing? Like, I'm just like, are people like living like this? Like, and, you know, and obviously my last marriage wasn't great, and I wasn't living like this. So that's all. I was just that made me stop. Like, this whole, I'm not even finished, but then I just had to say, okay, somebody would have been told off the way they're talking to these women, and the women are doing a good job, you know, quietly but with strength, still pushing their agenda. But these guys keep coming back in more and more, you know, condescending ways. Like, you know, we are men of, you know, standing in this community. Y'all just some bored housewives, and I don't know, just so, and they're pushing their husbands to use their connections to look into this thing, because the kids are, you know, their kids are at, you know, it's crossing between the black community and the old village, which is where all the upper class people live. So there's incidences that have happened in both communities, and they're trying to get them to respond. Like, but I'm just blown away by how they're being talked down to, and just brushed over. And then, you know, the woman who is the most refined, and you think she's the one with the most strength, her husband is the one snapping off, like, how dare you? Are you disagreeing with me? Are you arguing with me in public? Like, whoa, dude. You know, so just like, are people living like this? Is this what's going on? Anyway. Hey, so I'm back for the conclusion of this chaotic vlog in regards to the Southern Book Club Guide to Slaying Vampires. Okay, so I did the audiobook, and so let's give the final happenings that came around the book. So I think the last time I caught up, so this is like 3 days after I finished the book, I needed to think about what I felt about the book, and then things happened, and so here I am. So I'm doing this from memory, but her husband, Patricia's husband, they had the group, all the ladies of the book club had the husbands come in. They thought that the police were going to come in, and so I did talk about this. They thought that the police were going to come in, and they thought they were going to get this guy arrested and dealt with. But the husbands came, they snapped on him. Patricia ended up just, she wouldn't let it go. She ended up being very, very angry, and out of anger, her husband decided, I think the best thing for you, her husband's a psychiatrist, and so he decides, you know what, I think you need to be on Prozac, because I don't understand this behavior coming from you. She was just angry, and she was like, oh, you want me to take some Prozac? You want me to take it? And she took the whole bottle, ended up seizing, ended up in the hospital. Her husband brought the kids in, let them see her shackled to the bed. Her son had a complete meltdown in the hospital. He was like, okay, so it's either this dude and this thought process you have about him or me. You have to pick. And so the book then takes on this whole, it says like, I think it was 3 years later, she's like, it doesn't say necessarily that she's taking the medicine, but she seems like someone who's just zoned out. She's only thinking about, she's returned to kind of the perfect, kind of medicated kind of Stepford wife. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I have to take medication for my mental health, so I'm not saying it like that. But it's almost like it's the whole, like, she's medicated beyond what she needs to be. Everything is positive. Their book club has grown to this huge thing where both the men come and they read like Tom Clancy books and stuff like that. And so everybody's fake. Everybody's talking about losing weight or what they're doing to lose weight, and Slick has become, then you start really finding out that they've become super wealthy because of the vampire, and how he has sunk his fingers into the community. And I kept trying to figure out, was the author, who is Grady Hendrix, white guy. I was wondering if he was a black guy because he was, or someone outside of being white, because he was, commenting on white American society big time. And I kept trying to figure out, so, is he saying that the vampire is capitalism or whatever? But I didn't go there. I just kept listening to I decided to just stop trying to figure that all out and just enjoy the story. And then at one point, I can't remember what brought it on, but Patricia went on to visit, her son started getting really close to the vampire, James, and those thoughts kept niggling at her, like, okay, dude is, the thoughts kept niggling at her that he was going to take her child. He was going to take her child, but then she'd push him down because she'd remember what happened before. And then she has a visit from her mother-in-law, the dead mother-in-law, a ghostly visit. And she keeps saying, he's going to take our child. Ask Miss Green for the photograph. And she's like, so that's what caused her to go talk to Miss Green again. So she goes to Miss Green. Miss Green doesn't work for anybody in the community anymore. Well, she works for like a Mary Maids type of thing, and she works somewhere else in the night. So she woke her up during her nap. Miss Green was just like, did not have time for her. I liked Grady Hendrix's depiction of Miss Green, because Miss Green is how black women are. Like, she just didn't have the time. She was just like, why are you here at my house? You guys deserted me last time. I got work to do. My life is not like yours. What? And Patricia had to really talk to her and say, I'm not going to desert you at this time. Let's go and figure out, what's going on with him. There's got to be, I think before the girls all decided that they were done with this. I think they had thought, well, if he's a serial killer, he has trinkets, he's keeping something for all these people. And so they were like, we got to get into his house and figure it out. Oh, and the company that Miss Green worked for, Miss Green is the black woman who sent her children away. 3 years later, her children were gone because she wasn't getting help. So they decided, okay, she cleans the house. While I'm cleaning, I'll let you in. You can get in, look for stuff. She gets in. She finds one of the earlier girls' bodies, stuff in the suitcase in the attic. There is a completely nail-biting situation where, you know, that becomes a completely nail-biting, like, thriller situation. So this book is really good. Grady Hendrix writes really good. Like, he writes the social commentary really well. He writes horror and creepiness really well. Like, there's this rat scene that is like something straight out of the best of Stephen King. The way he describes the mother-in-law before she dies, and like her I just hate to say this, but her oldness and her, like, the stuff creeping out the corner of her mouth, like she's drooling. And like one time she comes to their book club's house and she's naked, and he describes her skin as gray and sagging and varicose veins, and you're just like, Jesus, do not let me get old, you know. So, but then it was like a thriller when he was describing them getting in and out the house, looking for the proof that he was not who he was supposed to be. So anyway, so then, you know, they finally come to the climax at the end of the book. They have to kill him. They end up having to kill him. He won't die, so they have to end up chopping his body up, and like his body, he's talking smack the whole time. Stuff is repairing itself as they're killing him. One thing I have to say is, I hated that Miss Green had to do the majority. Like, everybody else would like snap out, you know, like they kind of mentally check out, or they would get too tired, or they just couldn't handle it. But Miss Green steadily had to do it the whole time. You know, I didn't like that. I needed Miss Green to have a break. But at the end, they all ended up having circumstances that, you know, they all ended up having consequences and changes at the end of it, because dude pulled out. Whatever he was doing with the money, the vampire guy, the business failed, so they ended up having to you know, sell off stuff, and there was an economic downturn for them. But it was good, you know. 6 Mile, which is where all the black people were, it was still devastated by the, you know, whenever white people start building stuff up, black communities get dispersed. And so Ms. Green stayed, and her children were able to come back. She was really the only one. The main character, Patricia, was watching her husband, and like, people had died, and, you know, all he was worried about was the money, and she was sitting there watching him, and it clicked to her that this is not a good man. So she asked him for a divorce. And so I thought that was cool. But the girl who got beat stayed with her husband, and I don't know if she just wasn't a big enough character to remark on her marriage, but I felt like there was this implicit judgment that Patricia's husband was worse than Grace's husband, because Grace stayed with her husband and nothing else was said about them, and like, they went on, and Grace and Patricia's relationship was, you know, repaired. They were not friends for a long time, but their relationship was repaired. But Grace went on with her marriage, and Patricia and dude broke up. And I felt like, you know, yes, Patricia's husband was clueless, he was controlling, he could be a jerk, but there seemed to be more of a judgment on him. But I don't know if that's the case, or if it's just because Patricia was the main character that we saw everything through. But in the end, I really liked the book. I give it a 4 out of 5. I probably won't read the book again. That's the only reason why. It's not going to be a book that I reread over and over again. Some of the social commentary was a little shallow. The other stuff was great. The horror was great, but it wasn't enough. You know, I didn't like the characters enough to like visit them again. You know, like I visit the Outlander characters a lot. I want to see Jon Snow again. I visit certain characters in certain books a lot. I want to be back in their world again. I don't necessarily need to be back in the world with Patricia and her book club. But Bonnie Turpin, who was the narrator of this audiobook, gets a 5 out of 5. I love Bonnie Turpin. Even my daughter, she came in one time and was like, is that Bonnie Turpin? Because Bonnie reads a lot of the young kid books, and my daughter seems gravitated to a lot of Southern-ish books. And Bonnie seems to read a lot of black characters and Southern characters. I think Bonnie's black or mixed, but she does the Southern voices really well. And so I think that's the reason why she was able to do these white women voices really, really well. So Bonnie gets a 5 out of 5. The narration and the book itself gets a 4 out of 5. It was an excellent book. 4 out of 5 is that it's an excellent book, but I'm not gonna want to visit the characters or that world again necessarily, and so I'm not going to reread the book. But I would recommend to anybody read the book. It's scary, it's thrilling, it's amusing in some places. I wouldn't say laugh out loud funny, but it's amusing, and it has a little bit to say about our country. So that's it. That's my review, my chaotic vlog of the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. Bye.